The girl shows her earrings. Very nice. Alright, we're going on a safari. It's very extremely close. We're not going on that.
Back in the day when you used to be able to actually drive your own car through the safari.
Yep, I remember doing it.
Through here with the baboons, and they'd rip off your windshield wipers and your antennas and just wreak havoc on your vehicles. Since we switched over to the open air trucks, they do not fit that model anymore. They're not the kindest animals, and they have very big teeth. So the best way to see them is on these VIP tours, or if you keep your eyes open on the Bizarro roller coaster. That red arch is actually a decommissioned roller coaster. I believe it was the Scream Machine.
Oh yeah.
And we figured why not recycle it and use it for our baboons, and as you can see they like it very much.
Yeah.
So they have this whole area that kind of extends back to there. They've got ropes and stuff to climb on, and then it extends back through here too. You'll see a lot more of them on their platforms here. So our troop is up in their years now. They're much older. They're some of the original baboons that we've had here when the park opened. So all of them, this is interesting, and we do this with a lot of our animals. If we have kind of moved past their era of breeding, they're actually controlled so that we can allow them to just kind of age out naturally, because we do have a lot of baboons.
Yeah.
We actually just transferred over to fully solar. Our whole park is powered by solar energy. So when the solar people were here and laying down wire, the wire comes on those giant spools, and we were just like, do you want those when you're done with them, or can we have them?
Yeah.
Because zookeepers are very good at recycling in all categories. So we see things like old fire hose, big spools like that. Why not just give them to us? We'll find some use for them in some way to use it for our animals. Anything to make their days more lay out. When it's a really hot day, they kind of lay out completely flat in one straight line. What's fun about these guys is their family dynamic. So when the females lay the eggs, that is all she does. The males are the ones that incubate the eggs, they raise the chicks, they take on full parental responsibility. Mom just pops them out and then she leaves to go live her best life. In that they keep their spots throughout their entire lives. We have our leucistic one who's front and center right here. She is all white. So same condition, lacking pigment, but she still has the blue eyes. So these guys were actually brought over by European settlers as a game species. So they're originally from Europe, but they actually fit into our North American ecosystem so well that they're now considered native rather than invasive. And then we have and once they shed the antlers and they go fully into their rut, we have to drive through here pretty quickly because they will charge the cars. They think that we are competitors as well. So there are some of like the keeper trucks that have like marks on them or like holes on them from the elk. Kind of special souvenirs.
Deal, but he's got two little friends, a little silver one down the bottom. He's got another friend hides up top. Touch those, you'll have a bad time.
Okay.
So don't, when you throw, make sure you're standing back. Don't stand in and throw because you're gonna touch the wire and it's gonna hurt.
Okay.
And this is Lucy. She's the boss, so she's the only one who's going from here.
All right.
Just want to make sure
our
it goes past
matriarch.
that last wire up. If it falls a little short, that's okay. She'll scoop it.
Yep, so you can come right on up here. I have fruit for both of you guys to toss on in, and she will be very appreciative of it.
What's her name?
Look
Lucy?
around for a little
Lucy.
bit for them. She doesn't see straight down too well, just because of the way the trunk is. But
So their trunks are fully prehensile. They have more muscles in them than we have in our entire bodies. 100,000 in just the trunk alone. So she can pick up anything from a piece of straw to an entire tree trunk. Just watch for the top wire as you're reaching through. She will suck up water into her trunk and then shoot it into her mouth. They can use it as a snorkel when they're swimming. So that pool that we passed on the way in is deep enough for them to submerge themselves in. So on a really hot day, they'll be laying in there and you'll just see the trunk sticking up out of the water.
It's amazing how those trunks work. Hey, you want an apple? Here you go. Yep. I don't have them.
You can see on her trunk she's got that little like triangular bit on the end of it. That's almost like a finger. Like she'll use that to grab onto things and poke around with.
Good. One less carrot.
Now what's interesting about their tusks is you will have elephants that are left or right dominant. So the tusks are relatively soft in comparison to like a normal horn, so it wears down pretty easily. So you'll have elephants that are left tusked. So you'll see their left tusk is really short in comparison to their right, just means that they use that side a whole lot more. And then I can get a picture of both of you guys with her in the background if you'd like.
Oh, they're great.
The other is Dutch researchers that first observed them called them wide rhinos because they have a very wide square lip because they're grazers, and the Dutch word for wide is white. So it just kind of perpetrated like that.
Yeah.
Now their horns are different from a lot of other animal horn in that theirs are actually made of keratin. It's the same thing as our fingernails and hair. If their horn was to break off at the tip, it would continue to grow. As long as the root of the horn stays intact, it keeps growing. So they spend a great deal of their time wearing down their horns on trees or rocks. So in the wild, that's for the purpose of sharpening them. You may have noticed that our girls here have what I call designer grooves going up their horns.
Right.
All around the barrier for these sections are these cable fences. They like to rub their noses on that. One, because they're fulfilling that need to sharpen their horns, but also it just feels really nice. So these are male ostriches on both sides. Males have the fancy tuxedo of black and white feathers. Ostriches are the largest of all bird species. Comparatively, they have the smallest brains in relation to their size. Their brain is only about the size of a walnut. Their eyes are actually bigger than their brains. So they are woefully not very intelligent. But they still hold their own very much out here. They're very entertaining to watch. They have no problem holding their own with the rhinos, and especially the zebras, because zebras are not very kind animals either. They look like horses, they're a whole lot more like donkeys. Very stubborn, very
two donkeys or two horses. That would be donkeys. The donkeys, horses, and zebra all belong to the Equus or
they are actually black with white stripes. We have to confirm this because the skin on their noses and then around their ankles where they have no hair is black. And a group of zebra is called a dazzle. This is exactly what they do to their predators. So most animals want to blend in the wild. These guys stand out very much, and that's actually their defensive coloration. So when you have a herd of zebras together, you can't tell where one zebra begins and the other ends. It's called disruptive coloration. So I like to say that lions can't even read the menu, especially when they all start to scatter in multiple directions, and it's really hard to pick out one that they want.
That's the way they hunt, right? They single in on one, so if they can't single in, they get confused.
One that looks old, yeah, they have to pick one in the group before they invest the energy in running, because lions are not really marathon runners. They're more sprinters. So once they commit to one, they had better have made the right choice. And zebras are considered an altruistic species, so they will circle around their young and run circles around them to keep lions from picking out the young ones. Now I almost missed them. In this pool over here on the left are our Asian water buffalo. When they're in there, it's so easy for me to just drive right past them. So they love water. Then the hot days like this, they'll spend their time submerged in there. Sometimes they dunk their whole faces in, and I have to sit there and watch them to make sure that the face comes back up, and they splash around. So they aren't the Asian water buffalo. So they're in our Africa section because this is where all the good water holes are. And they're also one of the only animals we have that get along with our zebra, which is kind of a badge of honor. So they have the privilege of living in this section.
Yeah, this guy's eating poop. He's not very smart.
Yeah, this area helps to disperse as much as possible. They are critically endangered. There's only about 100 to 200 of them left in the wild. Conservation efforts for them have been extremely difficult because the countries, namely Chad and Sudan, where they are found, are under a great deal of civil unrest. So on-site conservation efforts are very difficult to coordinate. You're going to notice that we do have a zebra in this section. Occasionally the zebras will kick someone out of the herd or decide we don't really like you this week. If this does happen, we try to take, if it's one zebra, we'll try and let them into this section. So this guy has been in here a couple of times, but he gets along really well with the water buck, which are these shaggy guys here. So he's living large. He's perfectly happy to be in this group. So these are our ellipsis water buck. They live primarily around bodies of water, but they also, but don't be mistaken, if they are startled, they can leap up to 8 feet, which is a lot of ground to cover for a body that size. So this big guy in front, he's the male. So males and females grow horns, but he has that big dewlap of skin that hangs from his chest. It's like a big old flap. The females don't really have one quite as large. There are a lot of young ones in this group, so the babies are kind of heading up the herd at the end. This guy here has the wonky horn that's curved to the side. So this is something that happens in the wild as well. It's just like genetic variation with the curvature of the horns. In the wild, he would be at a disadvantage because, again, they use those horns to defend themselves, but under human care, you see that a lot more often because it's not going to affect him negatively in any way. And then some of these babies here were actually born this season, maybe 2 months ago. So they are very, very young and super, super cute. Their little stripes on the side of their bodies are their built-in camouflage. Helps them blend in the wild. They're going to live in grasslands or wooded areas, so that really kind of helps break up their silhouette a little bit. Their lives without ever having a proper drink of water, getting everything they need from what they eat. Now these guys are actually a conservation story in action because they were declared fully extinct in the wild in the year 2000 after having not been reliably seen for 30 years prior to that. In the year 2016, zoo breeding efforts helped reintroduce 25 of them back into the wild. Now they have been observed breeding. Their numbers now are probably about the low 30s, so they're certainly not out of the woods yet. But it gives you an example that it is never quite too late for these animals and how much zoo groups and breeding efforts can play a part in pulling them back from the actual brink of extinction.
This guy's got one horn.
Yeah, so it's possible. Yeah, so it's actually funny that you say that because I was just about to say that these guys are one of the animals that we believe the myth of the unicorn came from. Because if you look at them from just the right angle, it looks like they only have one horn, or if you have one that truly has one horn that was broken off for whatever reason, and then pair that with someone who's delirious with thirst in the desert, makes people think that they're seeing a mythical species. Now, there's actually a lot of research that's going into why so many horned animals have so much variation in their horns. Like, why are some spiraled? Why are some ribbed? Like theirs are, or elephants that the males are kicked out. They're primarily a female herd. So he would naturally live by himself in the wild. We can move all the way down. So
Really not afraid of people.
no, so he actually enjoys interaction with people. He gets a lot of it back here. If he lifts his tail, then just sidestep quickly because they can spray pretty far.
Oh, right.
So TK here, you can really see those horns up close. They almost look fuzzy, like they're fraying. It's like I said, it's made of the same thing as our fingernails and hair. It's almost like really tightly packed hair that's stuck together. Now these guys specifically are southern white rhinos. There are two subspecies of white rhino. Southern white rhinos are the ones that are other people that he has like bucked his back feet before, like a horse.
Oh my
so
God.
they're pretty agile for their size.
What are you doing, bud?
Have fun, guys.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. That was all over my cheek. So, excuse you. He's also a belcher. Take as quickly as you'd like. If you want to give me a camera, I can set this down on the table behind you and I can just take a bunch of pictures for you guys as well. So this is Noelle. She's one of our prettiest girls in my opinion. And then this guy here is Conan. He is our one adult male. You can tell the males from the females because they get these very bumpy heads on the top. So both of them have that central bump in the ossicones, but the males as they age get a lot of like calcium deposits on their heads.
Very greasy.
No. Don't walk away.
Stay with us.
They're so impatient.
This is these are ready to go when you have a chance. That's great. Thank you.
Yep, so your sweet potatoes are right there.
All right, buddy. You hungry? Here we go. Here's some more.
They say please with their tongues.
There you go, buddy. Here you go. Oh.
Hi, sweetie.
Look at this guy. Whoa. Well, I think I'm filming this whole thing. I gotta do some editing. Whoop. Here you go. Look at it. Are you hungry?
That's so funny.
Oh, yuck, I just got slime.
Yeah, I got wipes in the car for you guys.
Oh,
You
right.
guys are honestly some of my favorites because they really do have so much personality.
Come over here and stand by me for 1 second so we can get a picture together.
Okay.
Yeah, smiling. They are the largest of all lynx species. When he's fully grown, he'll be about at 60 pounds. Right now, he's probably close to 40 or in his 40s. He's really lanky. When he stands up, you can see he's got these awkward teenager legs. He hasn't completely filled out yet.
Where are these guys from? Like North America?
So no, they are found all through Europe, Russia, Siberia, all the way to China. So they are adaptable to an extremely wide array of climates and habitats. So anything from temperate grasslands up to mountains as high as 8,000 feet. So he can handle the cold, he can handle the warmth. He's got those really big feet for walking in the snow.
Okay.
They'll eat rabbits and hares, but he can also bring down a deer.
Oh, yeah.
Claws on his front legs. He walks around on his knuckles so he never wears them down. Those claws he uses to rip open logs.
Scratches?
No, the goats used to be in this yard, so those are all from goat horns. He'll use his claws to dig, to rip open logs and termite mounds. They're native to South America, and their primary food source is going to be ants and termites. He eats only insects, so he has no teeth. But in that head, he has a 2-foot-long, very sticky tongue that he plunges into ant holes. It comes out kind of like a pixie stick, and then he's got everything that he needs right on it. And he can eat up to 35,000 in one day.
Oh, boy.
In retrospect, with those claws too, those are his main form of defense. So his primary predator in the wild is going to be jaguars, and he can hold his own against a jaguar. When he feels threatened, he'll stand up and kind of hunch those big arms like this and then swipe as needed. So you can see there's lots of it. He gets his own actual formulated diet from us to make sure that he absolutely gets what he needs every day, but this yard is full of ants. So he spends a lot of time digging and looking for them. His sense of smell is 40 times better than ours, so he can smell where they're at. And they are solitary, so they live by themselves in the wild. They're territorial. But what's cool about him is that he's a sustainable feeder. So in his territory, he knows where all the ant and termite mounds are, and he will cycle through them to give them a chance to recharge so he doesn't clear out any one food source.
Oh, yeah.
The body is fine. There you go.
Hey.
Well, I almost adopted a kid for you, so a lot of responsibility. I don't want it myself.
Reflect heat, and then in the winter, because it does get fairly cold in the desert at night, And during the day, they get a more of a grayish brown color to their coats to help it absorb as much heat as possible. Now, we think that there are only about 100 of these guys left in the wild, and even then we're not really sure. Because their desert habitat is so inhospitable, we have only physically, or researchers have only physically seen 3, but they have found tracks to indicate herds of 100 or more. And we think that that's the reason why they haven't gone extinct yet, because we can't find them and neither can anybody else. So their inhospitable environment is what is keeping them safe. The males and females both grow horns. You saw one that kind of had a cool like loop of horns, but this is more of like their standard horn shape, those kind of waves, and then they're even on both sides. I'm gonna pull. Their manes are just starting to grow in. They're about 9 months old now. You can hear them actively communicating to each other, so they rely on her a lot. She's kind of starting to get to the point where she's like, ugh, get off, so needy. Cats that are hand raised by us or raised by their own parents are going to act very differently. So the ones that are raised by their own parents are going to act a whole lot more like their actual species. They're going to be a lot more aloof, not as interested in human attention. So these guys aren't super interested in us, but there are certain cats in our prides here that were hand raised. So when people come up, especially their favorite keepers, they're all about it. They're up at the fence, they're rubbing, they're talking, they seek out that human attention. But you can see they don't care a whole lot about us. This is actually their first season where people are able to come up and visit them on these VIP tours. So I was the first tour at the beginning of the season to come out and see them, and it was night and day from what we're seeing right now. They were in the back, they were mom was growling, they were like, Bones and Hollywood. Hollywood is on the left, Bones is on the right. These guys are juveniles. I think now they're about 3 years old, so they're still not quite big enough to be let out with everyone else. They got a little more growing to do. Their pond is green, not because of algae. It's actually a plant called duckweed, and the bears love it. They go and swim in it, they eat it, they come out completely green, and then they lick it all off their coat. It's a really nutritious and good tasting plant for them. So it does grow up here pretty naturally, but we do have the option to plant it in there for them, because it really is just like bear sugar. Like, they go nuts for it. Hi guys, you can see that they look a lot different from the black bears. This is my favorite. I don't know her name, but I'm dying to. I want to catch like a keeper out here at some point and ask them who's the teddy bear with the bald paws. It's coming, it's coming. Let me get a little bit closer. There you go. So she is an older girl, so you'll see that some of them do still have some of their winter fluff, because they don't groom as actively as the younger bears do. But that'll eventually fall off on its own. I know you love the oranges, sweetheart. Yes. So, to my knowledge, they have not been trained to stand up like this. It's kind of something they've shaped for themselves, or they've learned, hey, if I do the cute, I get the fruit. So some of them will stand, some of them will wave. I love her coat because it's kind of curly. She actually just does actively raising them. Bones don't have their wings left anymore, so you might see around their. Oh, hello. They all like to move at once. You can see the babies in the groups as well. She slays me. I can't. And then Zuri is the African lion up top. They're about 3